Hello students, today we are going to learn a poetry, an elementary school classroom in a slum by Stephen Spender. Students, when we see the title closely, we find there is a school in slum area. Okay, there is a primary school. Elementary means primary, okay? There is a primary school in slum area which is very positive thing which has happened in our society. But the question is the education that they are receiving in this school, is it beneficial for their future or they are just wasting their time here? We will learn that in the poetry through the words of Stephen Spender. But before that, let us know a few things about the poet himself. Stephen Spender was born on 28th February 1909 and died on 16th July 1995. He was an English modern poet, novelist, and essayist as well. And in his work, we find social injustice and class struggle as main theme. The same is here in this poetry as well, and he calls himself a socialist and pacifist. Socialist means the one who prefers social and economic equality, and pacifist means the one who promotes peace, who loves peace. Okay, and let us see the last point about the poet. He had witnessed two wars, that is, First World War and Second World War, and its repercussions, that is, results, consequences. Therefore, he expresses intense search for harmony and synthesis between the apparently warring claims of visionary and a man of action. It means the person who is preaching, they should practice what they preach as well. Students, now we will learn the poem line wise. Students, the first theme of the poem is the condition of the children and the theme of social injustice and inequalities. Okay, the condition of the children, which is very pathetic in the classroom, and social injustice. They are in that pathetic classroom. It is because of social injustice and inequality. The next point is need of holistic education. Only bookish knowledge is not going to benefit them. The students must be allowed to play, they must be allowed to nurture the hidden talent they have in them. Students, the last point talks about the difficulties faced by the underprivileged children. Number one, in that is malnutrition. Number two, education, of course. And third one is opportunities for these slum dwellers. Next is message of the poem. An appeal to the educated and affluent sections of society to better the lot of slum children whose only hope is education. This point we have learned in Lost Spring as well, that none of the places can work without laborer and rich people. Rich people are rich because of poor people, right? But poor people are neglected of their basic facility, basic right, and that is education. So it is the duty of a richer and educated section of our society to look after them and better their life. Students, second point talks about lost spring of children. During this phase, during their childhood, they should enjoy pleasure, they should enjoy games, they should enjoy nature, but they are deprived of all these opportunities. The last message of the poet is that we human beings should have humane quality first. We should be compassionate about others. We should be hurt by looking at the pain of others. Then only we can uplift their life. Okay, and not only we human being, but the government as well need to act proactively in order to uplift their life, uplift small children's life. Let's look at the structure of the poem, and it is written in blank verse or free verse because there is no rhyming scheme in the poem. Let's read out first four lines and then we will move towards the explanation. Far, far from gusty waves, these children's faces, like rootless weeds, the hair torn around their pallor, the tall girl with her weighed down head, the paper seeming boy with rat's eyes, the stunted unlucky ear. Students, the children of the slums are referred to here. Their pale faces are deprived of the cheerfulness and enthusiasm which mark the childhood days. Okay? Instead of having bubbling life, they seem to be worn out and exhausted with their burden. The expression far, far from gusty waves signifies that instead of enjoying their childhood in the lap of nature, frisking freely in the open grounds and open field, their childhood is confined to the dark and dingy walls of the slum. Here, in second line, like rootless weeds, the comparison has been drawn with the weak looking, undernourished faces of the children. You must have seen, students, the weeds. Weeds are unwanted plants, and just like weeds, these children are also unwanted in the society. They are unfit for society. There is no belongingness. It is because they don't contribute for the society. All right. Therefore, they are very uh, looked down upon by the society. In this phrase, the hair torn around their pallor, it means their worn out faces are covered by their unkempt hair. That means uncombed hair, scattered like rootless weeds. Okay? They don't have time to look after their own health and hygiene. Therefore, they are so untidy. Students, the tall girl in the classroom is burdened by the load of poverty and the trials and tribulations of life. She is so much suppressed that her body and her head have been bowed down with the burden of misfortunes. The children who are in the classroom have become as thin as paper. It is because of malnutrition, all right, and it is happening because of their penury, because of their perpetual poverty. In this line, the paper seeming boy with rat's eyes, the poet compares the eyes of the boy to those of a rat because the poor, undernourished child is deprived of the basic amenities of his life. His eyes are so inquisitive and timid, like the eyes of a rat are. He is always on the lookout for food and security. Let's move towards next lines. The stunted, unlucky ear of twisted bones, reciting a father's gnarled disease, his lesson from his desk. At the back of the dim class, one unnoted, sweet and young, his eyes live in a dream of a squirrel's game in the tree room other than this. Students, a thin slum boy has been referred out here. He is stunted. His growth is stopped. Okay, stunted means to stop. All right. His growth is stunted. His growth is stopped because of malnutrition. And the poet calls this child unlucky ear, unlucky successor. It is because they are not inheriting, these children are not in power or property from their parents, but they are inheriting disease, despair, and poverty. And when he recites his lesson from the desk, his voice is so tender, his voice is so soft and weak. Okay, it sounds very sickly, just like a energyless person. Okay, just like a diseased person, just like a patient, he recites the lesson. Okay, it is because he has inherited his father's gnarled disease. There is no spirit, there is no enthusiasm in his voice or actions. And in that very classroom, we find a child who is unnoted. It is because of ill-lit classroom. This also shows that the atmosphere, the ambience of the classroom was not conducive for teaching learning process. It was dull, which added to the despair of children. This little child, this young little boy, was different from others. It is because he is lost in his world of his dreams. He is in his imagination world. He is imagining something, okay? And what he imagines? He creates a fantastic world where he plays, and he is very energetic out there. He's playing just like a squirrel in the tree room. You must have seen squirrel students who is very energetic. Okay, squirrel is very energetic. Very quickly it moves inside the hole. Okay, and very quickly with great energy it revolves around us if we find them. So the same kind of classroom he wants, the little boy wants, but the situation in the classroom is totally contrast to that. The dull and monotonous lessons makes him so bored that he wants to escape from that situation and create a classroom which is full of activity. Students, right now in our school there are so many things, cal, smart class, etc. Even then students are very weak in learning. Imagine about these slum children without any amenities how they are trying to learn. Let's move to the next line now. On sour cream walls donations, Shakespeare's head, cloudless at dawn, civilized doom, riding all cities. Here we learn that the classroom of the elementary school has not been maintained properly. The pale cream walls, which must have been painted very long ago with some donated money by politicians or some social worker, all right, it creates very sad atmosphere, and in a corner stands a portrait or bust of Shakespeare or painting of Shakespeare, and it is so ironical that the lessons that they are learning does not have anything to do with Shakespeare. Shakespeare's portrait should be housed in a classroom where there is serious teaching going on, but here it is totally opposite. The children of slums perhaps can never taste the joy of literature. Similarly, there is a picture of beautiful valley full of fragrant flowers. The children can never experience their fragrance and beauty since they are condemned to life of slum. The entire atmosphere in the classroom is one of inactivity and morbidity, which contrasts with the cloudless sky at dawn and the concrete domes which override the cities. These children will never see the natural beauty because of concrete structures around them. Let me read out a few more lines. Belled flowery tireless valley, open-handed map awarding the world its world, and yet for these children, these windows, not this map, their world, where all their futures painted with a fog. Students, the expression belled flowery tireless valley represents natural beauty, and this valley is in Austria. The slum children pass much of their time in rummaging garbage and working somewhere or the other because of which they hardly enjoy natural beauty. They are deprived of beauty of mountains and flowery valleys. Therefore, the poet says the window and not the map. Okay, the window, from window, what they can see? They can see the slum, and that slum is their reality and not the things which are shown in the picture of the wall. The Tireless Valley, Shakespeare's Bond, big cities, city buildings, okay, and the map. All these four things are not in their life. And students, the map of the world which is in the classroom, it is symbolic of hopes and aspirations. For look at it motivates the children to explore the huge world beyond, the world which has been awarded by God with all its bounties. But the world for these children comprises the filthy slum. Their hopes for a better world may never ever be fulfilled. Students, when there is a fog in the environment, we won't be able to see the road ahead or the things which are in front of us. In the same way, the children are not able to see their future. Their vision is blurred, okay, because of which they are very much unclear about their upcoming days. Let's move to the other lines now. The life of these slum children are confined in the narrow streets of the slums where dirt and filth reign supreme, right? These children lead a life of disease and despair within these narrow streets, and their future is just like a leaden sky, okay, which is dull, dark, and heavy. This lead sky is symbolic of hopelessness and despair. The clean blue sky means hopes, okay, whereas leaden sky means monotonous life of slum area. These children are away from rivers, which represent adventure. These children are away from capes, which represents the world beyond. Okay, then star of words, which shows education. So the things that children require, they are away from it. They are very much aloof from it. Let me read out other lines. Surely Shakespeare is wicked, and the map is a bad example, with ships and sun and love tempting them to steal. Now, students, Shakespeare is regarded as wicked out here. It is because there is no relevance of Shakespeare's portrait in the classroom. Therefore, it seems that he is mocking at slum children, okay, because they won't ever be able to read him, all right, because their education is so much limited that they won't be able to read the work of a great literary figure, all right. And next is it creates a fake hope and aspiration, all right. And the map which is there in the classroom is also a bad example because it does not show their slum area, all right. The map is full of sun, which means light of education, ships, modern development, and love, warmth, okay, which they have never received from their parents, society, or anyone else. Let's move to next lines. For lives that slyly turn in their cramped holes from fog to endless night, on their slag heap, these children wear skins peeped through by bones and spectacles of steel. The poet says, the lives of these slum children cleverly turn and twist in their cramped holes. The slum children spend entire life striving and struggling for their sustenance in small, dirty rooms where life seems to be slither and slog. Throughout their life, they struggle, they survive, and they die. That is their history. Students, in this line, that is, From Fog to Endless Night, the writer describes the miserable and pathetic lives of the slum children. Okay, from foggy mornings till late at night, these children make desperate attempts to live their life. But at last, they get in their hand misery, hopelessness, and sufferings. It means morning or the brighter phase of life is never going to reach them ever. And the student slag heap refers to a large pile of waste materials. We know that. Okay, but here, even slum children, they spend their entire life there in the garbage and they have become so unwanted, okay, unfit, I told you. And there is no belongingness of these children. They are like garbage discarded by society. And because these children are undernourished, their body has become so thin and bones are literally peeping out of their body. And let's move to the next line. Of steel with mended glass. It shows the slum children's life is shattered and broken like bits of bottles on a stone because they're deprived of the necessities of their life. And the foggy, filthy slums, which comprise the world of the slum children, are living nightmares. Okay? Life there is worse than death. These slums are stalking the world just like death stalks its victims anytime and anywhere. Unless governor, inspector, visitor, the map becomes their window, and these windows that shut upon their lives like catacombs. Students, in the poem, the poet says, the primary schools in the slums exist merely for the namesake, and we know that we agree to that, right? Because the education that they get there is not at par, and they are poor in infrastructure with hardly any teaching or administrative staff to take care of them. These schools spring into life only when a governor, an inspector, or a visitor comes to visit the school. The map is symbolic of the world beyond, but the slum children are never able to become a part of this beautiful world and have their hopes and aspirations fulfilled ever. The open handed map is their classroom only, shows them glimpses of the world. In that very classroom, all the pictures are there which they will never ever be able to enjoy. Their lives have become just like a catacomb. You must have seen Catacomb. I'll show you the picture also, students. There is no way from where the light can enter. Okay, so it shows that there is no ray of hope in their life. Their life is just like a catacomb. You can see in the picture, their lives has become a catacomb where no light can enter. Children should be moved from this filth to nature. Let's read out other lines. Break, oh, break open till they break the town, and show the children green fields, and make their world run azure on gold sands, and let their tongues. Students, the poet hopes that these children would one day break free from the chains of the society. They will rise above all atrocities and economic injustice and will create a beautiful world for themselves. The poet also visualizes a world which is free for these children. They will be able to get access of green fields and they can do things in a carefree manner. The words like green fields and gold sand symbolize carefree and happy life. It refers to a world where social and economic injustice does not prevail and everyone enjoys the right to live a happy life. Run naked into books, the white and green leaves open, history is theirs, whose language is the sun. Student, sun is symbolic of the grace and light of God. Therefore, here it refers to the light of education. The poet strongly feels that it is education which transforms the world of slum children. Students, the poet says white and green leaves are equally important. Both are equally important because white leaves suggest books and green leaves suggest nature. So nature plays role in uplifting our health and education uplifting our culture, socio-economic status as well. Let's understand the last line properly. That is, history is theirs whose language is the sun. One can make a mark in history if only one outshines others, right? One has to outshine, one has to, shine brighter than others and glow like the sun. People who have the courage and the vision to break free from the constraints of life are the ones who create history. Great men are not different people, but they do things differently. And to educate them, we need to take the charge. We need to teach our slum children so that they can excel in their education and they can uplift their economical status as well. With education, they can prosper in life, and we must do that in order to uplift our country as well. Students, let's have a look at the literary devices that the poet has utilized in the poem. The first one is simile, and we know simile is a comparison between two distinctly different things with the help of like and as. And the first example is like rootless weeds. It describes the coarse, untidy, and uncombed hair of the slum children. The use of rootless weeds suggests that the children lack proper nutrition. That is why they are fragile. Next one is like bottle beats on stones. This shows that just like bottle beats, their life has also shattered. They are disintegrated. Third simile is like catacombs. The slum children dwell in dark and dingy rooms which resemble catacombs. The windows of these rooms look like the lids of catacombs. The last one is slums as big as doom. Slums where life is worse than death. It is like living in a hell. Students, let's move towards another literary device, that is metaphor. And we know metaphor is comparison of quality, action. Alright. So here we find in rat's eyes, the metaphor is suggestive of boy's timidity and anxiety. Next is father's gnarled disease. The boy's father is suffering from rheumatism or a deliberating disease that has left his body crooked. The quality of the boy's life has been severely affected by the father's handicap. The next one is squirrel's game. The boy also wants to play like squirrel but cannot. He must sit in the dull and dreary classroom. He cannot enjoy and actively participate in games like squirrel. Next is tree room, which is in the boy's imagination, full of curiosity and mystery. It is such a contrast to the gloomy classroom. Let's move to the next one, students. Futures painted with a fog. Just as fog blurs one's view in winters, the slum children's future is blurred by hopelessness and lack of empathy. Second last is lead sky. The sky is normally bright and blue, but the lead sky suggests dark and dull sky, just as the base metal is. In other words, there is no hope for the slum children. The last one is, students, spectacles of steel. Students, on the face of it, the expression seems to suggest that some slum children are wearing spectacles made of steel and having shattered, chipped or scratch glass, but more particularly, it suggests rigid, inhuman, indifferent, and callous attitude of the government officials who fail to notice the plight of slum children. They are myopic in their outlook, as if the glasses they are wearing are shattered or heavily scratched. So, at last, I'd like to say that it is a request from Stephen Spender that we should be involved in understanding and being empathetic towards the children of slum who are deprived of all the basic necessities. Students, in value based questions, you can add points from Lost Spring as well. By this, we have completed our poem. Thank you.